Today, I want to share with you one of the most life-changing skills that I have ever learned and that most of us never learned how to do. My name is Ashley, and this video is the first in a new series that I'm creating called the Darkness series, in which I'm exploring 8 topics, all focused on ways that we can move more easily through difficult experiences. Since many of us don't have a lot of these foundations, we can end up getting stuck in depression, stuck in chronic anxiety, stuck in addictive patterns. I am not exaggerating when I tell you that this is possibly the most important thing I have ever learned. I am not just saying that to hype this video. I really think this might be one of the most important topics that I will ever talk about, will ever create content about. It is something that has 180 degrees transformed my life. And so let's just dig right into it. What is the skill? This is the skill of how to be a gentle, loving, compassionate space for our emotions. So this is a posture, right? This is an internal posture that we can build with practice. And I am going to just say right off the bat that I know this skill doesn't sound like a super alluring, sexy skill, right? It's not a sexy sounding topic, but don't let yourself be deceived by this, because like I said, this has changed my life more than anything else. And this is actually a really meaty topic. There's a lot in here. And I think that if you stick with me through this video, I think you may be surprised actually by how much there is to learn about it and how much just understanding some of these things that I'm going to cover can change our perspective on ourselves and on the way we move through a difficult time. So I am going to cover 3 things in this video. Okay, so first I'm going to go over how we are actually conditioned to have the opposite posture, why this feels so hard in the beginning. Next, I'm going to cover how we can actually go about training this posture. How can we learn it? How can we become good at doing it? And lastly, I'm going to talk about why and how this is so completely life-changing. So please stick with me until the end, because some of the most juice and passion that I have about this topic is going to be in part 3. So I'm going to invite you to hang out with me until the end. Okay, so first, I want to talk about our conditioning a little bit. I want to talk about why this posture that we're aiming to build, this gentle, loving, patient, and kind posture, is so hard, and why we struggle with it so much. Essentially, at its core, this posture that I'm describing is self-love. And if you're like most people, you may have found that self-love is actually really, really hard to do. And I don't know about you, but I don't hear enough people talking about this. There are so many people out there that give lip service to self-love and how we need to love ourselves better. But there are not a lot of people talking about why is it so challenging for us? What has happened in our lives that's created the opposite of this posture? There's a couple things that I'm going to mention. And so the first one is our conditioning by our culture. So in Western culture in particular, and specifically, I'm living in the United States. If you've been raised in one of these cultures, there's a pretty good chance that you've been taught that in order to be successful in the world, you need to be constantly pushing yourself, hard on yourself, criticizing yourself. We are constantly absorbing into our psyches. If we can just push ourselves hard enough, then we can be successful. We learn to take on this sort of intrinsically harsh, self-critical, disdainful internal posture towards ourselves, right? So this is deeply conditioned. This is a big piece of this, is our conditioning. But the second piece I want to talk about is our childhoods and some of the ways that our early life can create a challenging relationship to ourselves. And so if you're like many people, there's a pretty good chance that you may have some self-worth wounds. And what I mean by a self-worth wound is that we have these internalized beliefs that cause us to question our worthiness, specifically if we're worthy of love. So we have to go back to our relationships with our caregivers as children. When we behaved in a way that our parents did not like, or let's say we failed to do something or failed to achieve something that they hoped that we would achieve, the way that our parents responded to us in those situations is really important. In order for us to have our sense of ourselves and our worthiness preserved, it's important that our parents responded in a way that is understanding, that is empathetic, that shows us that no matter what we do, we are loved by them the same amount. Whereas if our parents responded by getting really angry with us, emotionally withdrawing from us, punishing us when these things happened, these kinds of responses can create self-worth wounds in children. Any response that isn't fundamentally nurturing and understanding can do this. This is not about blaming anybody for anything, right? This is not about blaming our parents. Parents are, in my view, almost uniformly across the board doing their best and always intending to raise their child in a way that is beneficial, right? Nobody's trying to create these wounds, but they just can happen. It's very, very common. The reason that this can affect a child's sense of self-worth is because when a parent responds to a child's behavior, either by punishing them or rejecting them, without the presence of empathy and understanding, the message to the child is often that my parents' love is conditional. It's based on what I do. What the child's experience can be in this case is my parent withdraws their love from me when I behave like this. And the internalized message, therefore, can be, I'm not as lovable when I'm angry. I'm not as lovable when I don't perform well. This is actually a really big deal. When the child is internalizing, I'm not as lovable when, it's a big deal because for kids, parent love is a life or death situation. We depend on our parents, on our caregivers for survival when we're kids. Their love is what causes them to care for us, and we know this as children. We, deep in our primal brains, we know that love equals survival when we're children. As a result, we learn to reject and suppress the parts of ourselves that our parents found unacceptable and weren't able to be with in a loving way. But so what that means is that when we walk into our adulthoods, oftentimes we have these intrinsic parts of ourselves that we believe deep down make us less worthy of love, less lovable. Maybe it's our anger, maybe it's our vulnerability, maybe it's our sensitivity, right? Whatever our parents could not be with in a loving way, and that caused our parents to reject us or push us away or punish us. And I will also just add, this doesn't have to be from parenting. This can come from being bullied by peers. Many children end up rejecting their sensitivity, rejecting their vulnerability because of the fact they were bullied by showing sensitivity. And so what I'm describing is the early life roots of self-worth wounds. These are beliefs that we internalize early in life that we aren't intrinsically worthy of love as we are, and that we're only lovable if certain conditions are met. And so, of course, the problem with that is that we cannot always meet these conditions. It's impossible. These parts of us are intrinsic to us. They're not parts we can get rid of. And so when we don't meet these conditions, when we do have our anger, our vulnerability, whatever parts that we've rejected come up in our adulthood, typically the way that we naturally respond to that is by feelings of disdain, disgust, anger, irritation, self-doubt, like that kind of thing. This is how we rejected those parts in the beginning, was by developing those feelings towards that part and then pushing it away into the unconscious, into our shadow. And this is why we struggle so much with loving ourselves unconditionally, right? Because we all have these parts of ourselves that we've had to reject. And I don't want to say everyone, but I am going to say that most of us do have these. I'm spending all this time on this because I hope this is shining a light on why unconditionally loving and accepting ourselves is so hard to do. It's like literally already been wired into us that we are not unconditionally lovable. And so we're having to unwind that. And so next I want to talk about how do we actually go about shifting this, transforming this? How do we grow our capacity for self-love? The way that we start to rebuild this is through reparenting. So reparenting is the process of learning how to give ourselves the kind of nurturing, the kind of empathy and love that we actually need. And the good thing about being an adult is that we are autonomous now. We usually are able to survive on our own without our parents. And so it is our chance, this is the time when we can begin to build the kind of self-care habits into the gaps that we may have from our early life. So reparenting, in my view, has 3 parts that I'm going to talk about, which are noticing, pausing, and inviting. So the noticing piece is noticing our triggers. It's noticing what situations make me really mad, make me really irritable, make me really frustrated, really anxious, really agitated, or maybe shut down. And making some notes of these in the beginning, keeping a little notepad, whatever works for you, your phone, a place where you can just make a note of when this stuff happens. This is so powerful because our triggers are a doorway into seeing our patterns. So this is like the self-knowledge piece. Then the second piece is about pausing to make space when this happens. So when we're triggered, whenever possible, pausing, taking a moment to be alone, taking the time to notice, how do I actually meet myself when I get upset, when I get triggered? Do I berate myself? Do I beat myself up? Do I internally yell at myself? Do I tell myself I shouldn't feel this way? Am I telling myself that I'm crazy for feeling what I'm feeling, right? Am I actually gaslighting myself? So the power of the pause is key here. The third piece I want to mention is inviting ourselves to try something different. Can I be a little bit gentler? Can I just try out being a little bit gentler with myself? Can I try talking to myself a little differently? What if I said to myself, wow, I'm feeling really upset. I'm going to just take a break and be alone for a few minutes. What if I try putting my hand on my heart? Can I just try listening to what I'm feeling without judging it? Just seeing what I feel. Like pulling almost a tiny bit away from it instead of fully merging with it. Having a tiny bit of distance, not too much, but a little bit of distance to be able to look at what I'm feeling without feeling attached to it. Like, oh, I have to respond with total calm. I'm not allowed to feel this. I'm not allowed to get upset. It's okay. Just notice that stuff and try to hold just a little bit of space between our observational brain and our experience. So these are the foundational pieces. And so the goal of reparenting and doing this practice over time is that what's happening is we are building an internal sense of trust. We are building trust in ourselves that we can be relied on to treat ourselves with love and to give ourselves the care that we need. I cannot overstate how important this is. We are learning that I am a safe person to be with when I'm going through a difficult experience. My inner child feels safe to be with me when I'm having a hard time. The power of this is that once we feel safe internally, it calms our nervous system and it teaches us that our emotions are safe here. We know how to receive them, right? That's what we're doing when we practice the noticing, the pausing, the inviting. We're building capacity to be with whatever emotions are coming up, even if our old habit was to get angry with ourselves, to berate ourselves, to punish and suppress ourselves. Every time we get triggered and we do this 3-part practice, we're retraining that response and teaching ourselves it's safe. Whatever experience I'm having, it's safe for it to be here. And so once we've built this internal emotional safety, it actually starts to invite our emotions to come up. When we are distracting ourselves or avoiding our emotion, suppressing our emotion, it's like a giant roadblock. Our emotions get stuck. But once we build this self-trust, it opens the roadblock and emotions start coming through, asking to be held, asking to be felt, and then they move up and out. Okay. So if you have stuck with me this far, I am really excited because the next thing I want to talk about is why this is so life-changing. One of the things that I have noticed in myself and in the people that I know and love is that we all have these things that we do to cope. As human beings, we have to somehow be able to tolerate our experience. It's not just about physical survival, right? We have to be able to survive in here, in our minds. We have to find a way to tolerate what we're in. And so what ends up happening is that we reach for whatever we can, right? We often have these habits that we don't like, but we use them because that is what we were taught to do. We were taught to distract ourselves. We were taught to numb ourselves from our pain. So we have habits like, maybe it's binge eating, right? Or snacking habits that we have. Maybe it's alcohol or substance abuse. Maybe it's binge watching TV or endless scrolling. Maybe it's constant busyness, being a workaholic, right? There's so many ways that we can keep ourselves out of our pain, out of our pain, out of our pain. And I do not think that our addictions are the problem. I do not think the addictions in themselves are the problem. The problem is that they're all we have. The problem happens when it's the only coping strategy we have, because what happens is it keeps us out of our pain, so our pain cannot move. Our pain cannot leave. It can't transform us into the next version of ourselves because it's stuck. It's being pushed down, it's being ignored, it's being suppressed, it's being trapped. And so this is why we get trapped in these cycles, right? We don't know how to move out of our addictions, out of our habits. And this is why they have so much power over us. Because when they're all we have, we will keep getting looped back into them over and over and over again because we are missing the foundational tools in our toolkit for coping. This skill, I really believe that if most of us have it, we would be able to move out of our addictions. We would be able to shift out of some of our chronic anxiety, our depression. I am not trying to say that this skill is going to cure all ills. It can't. I cannot possibly say that, right? Things are more nuanced than that. But I think that this is a huge missing piece for most of us living in society today. This is why so many of us feel stuck in our lives. Why we feel so frustrated. Why am I stuck? Why do I keep going back to these patterns over and over and over again? And it's because most of us only ever learned how to numb ourselves, how to distract ourselves and stay out of pain. And I really think this is actually one of the few emotional skills out there that can completely transform our lives. It is not for everyone. I think there are people who may feel like I just don't want to face my pain ever. And I get that. And it's a valid viewpoint, right? Like if that's you, it's okay. You do not have to do anything. But if you're someone who feels like, damn it, I am ready. I'm ready to move through my grief, to move through my depression, to emerge into the next phase of my life. If you feel like I'm ready to move past these patterns that I'm so frustrated by, that I feel so stuck in, give this a try if you haven't already, or if you have, keep practicing it. Keep refining it. Keep learning about it, because there is a lot to it. I can't possibly cover everything that there is to know about this skill in one video. I hope that the future videos will continue to refine and build on this. That's my intent. So if this has any resonance for you, if you feel anything in you that's drawn to know more about this, keep looking for these videos. I'm going to keep releasing them about every 2 weeks, about every other video coming up here. And this one, this skill, the first one that we're covering today, is, in my view, the most important one. It is the foundation for everything else. So I would love to hear from you in the comments. Was there anything from this video that was new to you, or that felt like there was a light bulb that went on for you? I hope that you've taken away something that feels really powerful to you. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I will see you next time.